Welcome to another episode of MissTrial, the hit podcast that talks about all things law, politics, etc. Three former public servants and prosecutors and friends and now law partners are here to talk about all the things that are going on. Of course, we have to start with the debate. I mean, my goodness, Kamala Harris just wiped the floor with Donald Trump. And then we have to talk about how the FEC is looking at Elon Musk for influencing the election. I can't wait to talk about that with you guys. And also Manhattan DA, and will Trump ever get sentenced? I mean, it's just insane what's going on. How you guys doing?
Great.
Good. Much better after the debate.
Right?
I was like approaching
Remember how much worse it was after the last debate?
Yeah.
Tell me about it. I mean, so many people were nervous, right? I mean, like, how's she going to do? What's going to happen? I mean, the last debate was really scary.
I mean, I'd like to say that, especially us, the three of us, having spent many years prosecuting cases in front of juries, I'm not surprised that she was able to present herself as well as she did, because she's used to being in front of an audience. I think that what she did overwhelmingly, and through doing that, pointed out how Trump was just awful at talking about policy. She actually put meat on the bones of every policy position that she was talking about. And Donald Trump could not talk about not only could he not talk about one policy issue, this is someone who has already been president, couldn't talk about one policy issue, but he couldn't answer one question. Like, are you going to veto a national ban on abortion? Wouldn't answer it. And I mean, I think that it showed such a stark difference. And to all the people who said it was 3-1, first of all, stop whining. Like, well, I lost, so now I'm going to blame the moderators and I'm going to blame my opponent. He had 5 more minutes of speaking time than she did. That's not nothing.
Fact checking was also like, I'm not aware of any state that allows infanticide. I mean, that's like not really putting a heavy thumb on the scale there. Like, no, you're not allowed to kill babies. That's not, that might not.
Except I saw on social media, someone said, a baby killed after 78 years after birth.
Yeah.
It showed Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, because she did kill him. I mean, just that claim that there's any state, the fact that anyone would get mad that the moderators fact-checked Donald Trump when he said that there are states that allow babies to be killed after they are born. You can't let that statement go without fact-checking. I mean, yeah, they didn't fact-check Kamala Harris because she didn't lie.
Yeah. I mean, just to put a finer point on that, one of the things that they fact-checked her, they didn't do it in real time, but they did subsequently, like how many falsehoods did each side say? She said that the Biden administration had invested $1 trillion into clean energy. It was around 700 billion, but at the end of the day, it's going to end up being over $1 trillion. And, so that's like a big lie.
Thing.
Information. But, I just think also the level of seriousness, like, did I really hear Donald Trump talk about people eating pets like dogs and cats?
People.
I mean, it's just so outrageous that this is what we're talking about. And like, you're questioning a woman's race who went to Howard University.
So, what's so interesting for me is we're not like a very political family. I have 3 teenage kids and they have a lot of other things that they care about and are concerned about. But I watched this debate with them. It's the first debate I've ever watched with them. And one of them, my oldest, is going to be a first-time voter. He's a freshman in college. And so I know, Karen, like, you're live streaming your thoughts, whatever. I was like live snapping with him with my other 2 teenage kids there. And my oldest was like, wait. He was like, a couple of these things. He's like, that is the most outrageous thing, particularly on the race thing, where he's like, she doesn't know what she is. Is she Black? Is she Asian? He's like, right, people can be both. Like, he was just, it was his introduction to her and my other 2 teenage kids. They wanted to know how she was going to present. And they said exactly what you said, Kathleen. They're like, oh, she's a prosecutor. In a good way. Like, she gets her point across effectively. Good communicator, takes the question, answers it, and also sometimes answers the question she wants to answer. but does it in a pretty seamless, smooth way. So that was like kind of interesting, to be around these first time, kind of curious voters and get their
So interesting.
reaction.
Well, because, also, Danya, that age group is one that the Trump, campaign is saying we have a hold on all young people. And I think that there is definitely a move towards the Harris-Walz campaign, because they're talking actually about issues that matter to that generation of kids, housing affordability, healthcare, all of those issues that matter to kids,
Environment. Remember that as an issue?
Yeah, right.
Come up, right? It's like that's. I mean, I guess fracking certainly came up, but it's certainly not a front burner issue the way it had been. But yeah, look, on abortion alone, and democracy alone, I think. Look, at my kid goes to a pretty conservative. He goes to a Jesuit school, and it's not one of these hotbed liberal campuses. And he was with a bunch of his friends who also didn't really know. A couple of them had said they weren't going to vote for Biden, but were curious. And they all go, that's like a snap poll, or flash poll, whatever it's called. Like, a lot of them in that room were just like, she killed him. Exactly what you said, Karen. Like, she wiped up the floor with him. Like, there was no equivocation. It was not even like, there's no both sides of them. I was like, no, she was better than he was. And I like what she had to say more than him, which, obviously we don't know how that plays out, but in that population, 18 to whatever year olds, like, I think they get her. And I like the way when she emphasized, he said, you're Biden. And she very pointedly said, I am not Biden and I am not you. And here's who I am. And I think that really resonated with people, and especially young people who don't know.
To say nothing, but also, Donna, to say nothing of just like the stark difference between their appearance. She's young and vital and all about the future. And he was sitting there looking like a lost old man.
Yeah,
who couldn't.
And more so.
Yeah.
He's been like doing these victory laps about how he mopped up the floor with Biden back in June, a million years ago.
No, and he's saying he mopped the floor with her. He's walking around saying he won the debate. I mean, they can't, it's just interesting to me that like they just say stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, they say stuff. And look, some people believe it, but not the people who watch that debate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard.
I mean, truly, not anyone who actually watched the debate would say, I just don't on what basis, I don't even know what the argument is, other than the moderators cheated, right?
Which is just ridiculous. But also,
it was rigged. I've actually really been filtering him out a lot more just for my own sanity and mental health. Because when he says things like, oh, the debate was rigged, they almost can't.
Her earrings were microphones, and she was getting fed stuff through her earrings.
Well, he had said Joe Biden was on cocaine for the State of the Union. Of course, that's like not a jump from that.
But this is what concerns me about all this, you guys. Like, especially, kids, Asher's age, Danya, who's, freshman in college. Like, where are they getting their news from? I'm so glad that they actually watched the debate instead of going to wherever they go to get their news and seeing it filtered through that, which is definitely not going to be filled with actual facts. And, so the fact that they watched it is like a victory, I would say, number one. But number two, like, Donald Trump is going to talk about dogs and cats from now until when? And I mean, does it stick? I mean, this is why it concerns me about his, and the whole weird comment that, Tim Walz calling Donald Trump and JD Vance weird. It was so good. And everyone just kept amplifying it. And so all of a sudden you start to say, yeah, maybe he is a little weird. But by the same token, are people going to believe that there are really house pets that are being abducted and eaten by, Asian immigrants?
Well, I want to just talk a little bit about that one particular comment, because, it was very much a dog whistle, because I was watching the after the show kind of commentary, and there was a kind of validator, a Republican validator, that was talking about the debate and Trump, and they were saying how unfair it is and this and that. And the person questioning him said, yeah, but what about this dog and cat pet thing that, the mayor of that town came out and said, that's not happening. There's no reports of this. Where did this come from? And they were trying to contort and twist. He's like, well, I think it's because there was this report that somebody said they saw them killing ducks and eating them. And that's where it came from, which seemed like this contorted, twisted, BS thing that they're trying to say, oh, and that's pets. And, the more I think about it, the more I just want to put a pin in how racist it is. I mean, think about it. If this was white people doing that, they would call that duck hunting. Right? I mean, white people go and they kill deer and they bring it home and they make it into, sausage and meat and whatever. And that's called hunting. And that's why people want
RFK Jr. eat his own dog. And I don't think he faced too much recrimination for that.
Yeah, exactly. But okay, so yes, there are people who are duck hunting and then eating the duck. But if white people do it, it's called hunting and the Second Amendment. But the minute a Black immigrant does it, it's somehow this gross thing that they're eating your pets. And that is the different standard and the different lens that it's like the dog whistle thing of the right-wing MAGA people that they do. And so, as much as people roll their eyes and say, oh yeah, he's just exaggerating, it is so much more insidious than that because of how it is that they are just always, portraying, Black people as less than or women as less than. If you are not in this category of white male, and that is what all of the JD Vances and all of their, look at Elon Musk tweeting about Taylor Swift's endorsement, which we'll talk about in a minute. But he tweeted afterwards this thing about, oh, I'll give you, I'll put a baby in you, or whatever it is that he said,
I'll give you a baby and I'll take care of your cats.
Yeah, I'll give you a baby and I'll take care of your cats. Well, guess what? That is a dog whistle that the incels use. You know what the incels are? This underbelly involuntary celibacy. They're anti-women and they promote rape. And it's this weird, horrible, dangerous, creepy underbelly group of men. And guess who pointed that out? Elon Musk's own daughter. Okay. They are trans and they identify as a woman, and they tweeted that this is creepy incel stuff. And I agree. First of all, it's creepy AF, right? Like, ew, she would touch you with a 10-foot pole. But these are the people that are going to be in government, that he says he's going to promote, people who absolutely go after this kind of, this white male, domination, anti-immigrant, anti-everything, that's what this is all about. And that's why that statement, as much as people want to say, oh, it's just extreme. No, it's more than that. It's insidious and dangerous.
It's so disgusting, and we're going to talk about this later when we talk about the FEC stuff, but maybe even more insidious, I don't know, is the fact how amplified, how magnified his tweet was because he owns the platform.
Yes.
And so
exactly.
It gets so much oxygen because of who he is. And of course, he's the person on X who gets the most views and likes and whatever, because he manages to engineer that. It's so, I saw something where it looked like someone posted on some social media platform, Travis Kelce, Taylor's boyfriend's response to Musk, and says I'll twist you like a pretzel, whatever. And I was like, that's weird. And so I had to do fact check. I'm like, did he actually say that? And he hadn't, which also goes to something, we'll talk about, which is just the manipulation of reality. You don't know what's real and what's fake. I mean, Taylor Swift's whole provocation for tweeting or putting out there who she was voting for was because of these deep AI fakes that Donald Trump promoted that purported to show that she supported him. And so she had to say, actually, I don't. I just want you all to know this, and here's who I support. And so that is one of the scarier things going into this election, is what to trust and not to trust. Elon Musk himself, the most powerful, certainly the richest and arguably one of the most powerful men in the world, is out there promoting and retweeting, lies, election lies and other lies. And because it's his space, he can do that.
I'm
And
so glad you called it a lie, though, because so many people and so much, the legacy media are calling it misinformation, falsehoods. No, they are outright lies, and we have to call them lies. And it really diminishes how bad it is by calling it these other terms. And I love that you called them lies.
Wait, Danya, to your point, before we get to Elon Musk, I cannot even believe he liked this post and said, interesting observation. I have to read this to you because this is the level of his depravity. I mean, so this is the total, I guess whatever, you don't call them tweets anymore, whatever this was that he said, interesting observation.
You still do, right?
I guess they call it, yeah. So this is a tweet or whatever, I don't know. So people who can't defend themselves physically, parentheses, women and low T men, parse information through a consensus filter as a safety mechanism. They literally do not ask, is this true? They ask, will others be okay with me thinking this is true? This makes them very malleable to brute force manufactured consensus. If every screen they look at says the same thing, they will adopt that position because their brain interprets it as everyone in the tribe believing it. Only high T alpha males and aneurotypical people, parens, hey autists, exclamation point, are actually free to parse new information with an objective, is this true filter. This is why a republic of high status males is best for decision making. Democratic, but a democracy only for those who are free to think. This man has 197 million followers. He alone can set the algorithms on X's platform. He can amplify all the good things about Trump and amplify all the negative things about Kamala Harris. He can suspend, white dudes for Harris. He can suspend that account. He can label it as spam. I mean, this is a man that Donald Trump has said is going to be in charge of auditing the federal government. This is also a man who owns SpaceX, which has probably, inarguably, more government contracts than any other company on the planet. And not only that, but he owns Tesla, which gets a ton of tax credits because of what they're doing with cars. I mean, this is something that people have to understand. It's
very quid pro quo transactional relationship. It's like, oh, you're going to support me and run my campaign on your platform for free, which we'll talk about when we talk about the FEC. I'll let you be the head of my transition and you can, audit government the way he gutted Twitter, right? And got rid of whatever it was, 70-something% of its workforce. And it went, down the gutter. So that's what we have to look forward to. But yeah, it works out great for those two IT alpha men.
Yeah, right. And it's the same as Donald Trump. As Kamala Harris pointed out, here's a guy who was, inherited how many hundreds of millions of dollars and declared bankruptcy 6 times. I mean, that's the reality of who these people are.
Wait, so low T and high T, is he talking about testosterone?
Yes.
I'm assuming, yeah.
What the
As only an incel would.
Right.
I mean, he's talking about, what, and only and he's like criticizing people with autism. I think he's on the spectrum.
I think he's saying we're the smart ones. Like, hey,
I think he's saying he is on the spectrum. That's how I understood. Yes. I haven't read that, but
okay, good.
I think
I was about to lose my mind on that.
If you lose your mind about how he's saying our little lady brains can't comprehend or filter information, only people like
I know, but I as the mother of a child with autism, my mama bear came out for a second.
Yeah.
I don't care what he says about women because I know that women can wipe the floor with men like him, like Kamala Harris did. But I kind of freaked out for a minute. So thank you.
Well, another thing that he did, because people are claiming that even for Elon Musk, he's becoming even more and more erratic. But on Sunday, he endorsed a post that suggested that women did not have the ability for critical thought and should not participate in government or democracy. And on Monday, the day later, he shared an AI-generated image of Miss Harris dressed as a communist. I mean, this is what happens when you own a platform like this and you have almost 200 million followers. And even people who try to go, to show that this is fake. I mean, meanwhile, these platforms are supposed to actually check to make sure that things are not AI generated. That his platform is not doing any of that stuff.
He fired all those people when he bought it. He came in and he fired all the guardrails, all the people who did fact checking, that kept the, he claims, oh, it's free speech. What free speech? Yeah, it's like a platform.
You hate. That's not free speech.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why he is perfect for that audit job under Trump. I mean, we've talked about Project 2025. They want to gut the government of all the people who keep our systems of democracy in place. We're going to get rid of them just like they did the content moderators, and then we're all screwed.
Well, to your point, Danya, about bringing up Project 2025, I'm glad that they talked about it in the debate. Of course, he disowned it. But I just thought it was so interesting when they asked him, what is your replacement for the ACA? Well, we have a concept. You know why he doesn't have an actual replacement that he can talk about and enunciate? Is because it's in Project 2025. All of his policy positions are outlined in Project 2025. And if anyone watching that debate, that should have been made very, very clear that he was not.
He said he hadn't even read Project 2025.
He might not have. It is a book with words in it. He didn't do that. But he can't run away from. I mean, here's what he said a couple times. He said it in the debate. He said it before, and it just is so rich and funny almost. He's always said, like, oh, I don't know anything about it. Some of the things are good and some of the things are bad, but I don't know. It's like, well, how do you know that? I mean,
Didn't he also say he doesn't talk to JD Vance?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
that might also be true.
How do people let him get away with that? How do you get away with that? Can you imagine if Kamala Harris said, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know anything about, fill in the blank. Can you imagine what people would say to her? Like, they would totally savage her if she said, oh, I don't know about that. Instead, what they say is, oh, you have no policy positions, no policy. Guess what? It's all policy, but people don't want to hear it. People don't want to hear what she has to say. It's all policy. Everything she said was a policy that she intends to implement. And he said, I have a concept of a plan, or I haven't read that, or, and he makes shit up. And crazy is she comes out and actually says, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I believe in. She's not the presidency. And the thing that's interesting is, the presidency until the Supreme Court, July 1st, was never considered a king. It's supposed to be separate but equal branches of government. And no one branch is supposed to have more power than the next. And so she can't say, oh, I'm going to, wave a magic wand and ban guns. You can't do that. You actually have to have Congress has to come in and pass laws. And yes, she can sign it or not sign it, or, it's just ridiculous. And so she talks about what her ideas are and what she wants to accomplish, but she can't say things and I'm going to wave a magic wand. I mean, they blame her for the border. They blame her for immigration. They say, oh, look what she did. Well, guess what? It's because Congress refused to pass laws. They had bipartisan support for smart immigration laws that they refused to pass. Bipartisan support that would have actually solved a lot of the problem and a lot of this influx. And you know why they didn't? Because Trump said, don't do it. Keep it chaotic and messy so I can win the election and then get my get out of jail free card. Because that's the only reason he wants to be president. So he can dismiss the DOJ cases and he can, prevent him. He can make it so that he doesn't have to ever be held accountable. That's why he wants to be president. Not because he cares about us. Not because
the emoluments.
Pardon?
I said, don't forget about the emoluments.
Right.
Explain what that is. That is a word that not everyone knows. So talk about the emoluments and the emoluments clause of the Constitution. Tell people what that is.
Yeah, that's essentially, it is in the Constitution that a, president cannot take foreign emoluments, cannot get foreign influx of cash, cannot use the office to self-deal, essentially. And there were a lot of concerns, a lot of questions that were raised in the first go round about whether or not, when he would have, people meet him at his golf course and he would have Secret Service come, or he would have, government officials or whoever, come and stay at his various resorts or hotels, and he's making money off of it. I think there's a legitimate question to ask of whether or not that is actually constitutionally prohibited. But he made money off of the presidency. He's been making money ever since. You see his ads like hawking, I don't know what, gold coins or something.
Weird shit.
Or his True Social, right? The stock of True Social, right? That's all.
Well, except that's not making any money. That is tanked beyond. I mean, he said it's such a bad business person. Even him, even the Trump with Trump brand and all the stuff. Truth Social stock is just, if you look at the line, it goes straight down. And I think he lost $7 billion. I mean, it's just ridiculous how much money he's losing with that.
Take money out of it before that. I mean,
the problem is there was a, whatever that's called, where there's a period where you can't.
You couldn't, right?
Yeah. So he had to wait that period out, and that period is expiring, and the thing has lost like $7 billion worth of value during that period. But Danya, you brought up something last time on our last show also, which was that, and he did it again at the debate, that he's violating the Logan Act, right? Him standing up and saying that he said, if I'm elected, I'm going to broker the end of the Russia-Ukraine war before I even take office. That's actually, you're not allowed to do that. That's actually not, you're not allowed to, there's a law that goes back to, I think, the 1700s or something, and why don't you explain what that is, Danya? I mean, because I was shocked when he was saying that.
Exactly what you said, which is a private citizen who's not authorized by the government cannot engage in diplomacy with a foreign country.
This is one of the questions actually in our a couple of weeks ago, you guys, that we were going to answer for one of the listeners.
That's right.
Yeah, because there were allegations. Yeah, I mean, whether it's Trump with Bibi, or was Mike Flynn with the Russians, or, to be fair, John Kerry speaking to the Iranians after, Trump pulled out of the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action that was meant to keep Iran a non-nuclear nation. But no one has ever been prosecuted. I think there were 2 prosecutions back in the
18th century.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, he says those things like as if I can do this even before I'm sworn in as president. It's just
not can, but will. He will solve all the wars, I guess, before he comes in. Yeah, look, I mean, there are all kinds of acts. There was Hatch Act, which also gave him little concern, back in the day. And the Hatch Act is one that says you can't use, federal time or resources to promote a candidate, and there were. I think
he used the White House. He used he had political. I mean, it's like crazy what he. Oh.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's part of his defense. I haven't really thought about it, but part of his defense, I think, is that everything he was doing, like on January 6th, was really, was him acting in official capacity. Well, in furtherance of the election, that does seem to. I mean, like Hatch Act is the least of his concerns. Obviously, when he's facing federal fraud and conspiracy and obstruction charges, but it's a little bit of a, once the half of one or half of what's it, 6 of one, half dozen, like pick your poison or whatever it is. Like you run into some ethical, at least, quandaries on the other side of the coin. But anyway,
that was just such an amazing thing to watch, that debate. I spoke about it before that, I met Kamala Harris once, and she's just one of the most impressive people I've ever met in my life. And, I was so influenced by her and impressed by her when I met her, and to just see her and see her personality and the way she's just so smart, and she is so thoughtful, and she's so, I just think she's a leader. She came across as a world leader to me, and she seemed very presidential, and I noticed that Trump tried to make himself look less weird. His complexion has changed to less orange. His hair color is less yellow. The thing that sticks out wherever is less, he's trying to look less weird, but there's nothing you can do when you open your mouth and say things the way he says things. I mean, he's just, the other thing I just want to say before we talk about, I want to talk about the Federal Election Commission and Elon Musk. The other thing I loved was there were people on Twitter who were really upset that they weren't muting his microphone. And they were like, mute the mic. Why is this? You said he talked for 5 minutes more than she did. I loved that Kamala Harris doesn't need his mic muted. She could take him on anyway. She could take him on, do whatever you're going to do. Don't mute the mic, just say it. And she can handle incoming anything that goes that way. I was like, you go, girl. Like, I loved that they didn't mute the mic on him, because then he'd just say, oh, they shut me up. It's so predictable, but say what you're going to say. I'm not afraid of you. Bring it on. I loved it. So before we talk about more Elon Musk, because I think this is something that we need to really concentrate on and focus on, because it is dangerous what he is doing. And I want to make sure that is something that people are aware of. But before we do that, I'm going to call, I want to go for an ad break, just a really quick one. We love our pro-democracy sponsors. They're amazing. And we couldn't do this without them, because we have no private investors. We have no funders. The reason we can bring this information to people is because of these pro-democracy sponsors. So we love them. These are all things that we choose, we test out, we think are great. And, use our special discount code if you think you would like them too, and help us support this show. Dry skin, deep wrinkles, crepiness. These are just a few of the visible signs of aging, something that today's sponsor, OneSkin, knows all about. Now, I'm not really overly concerned with aesthetics, but I am on TV. And so I want to stay looking young and keep my skin healthy and look younger as I get older. And that's why I love OneSkin's creams and topical supplements that actually help your skin feel and behave younger as you age. Frankly, I am told all the time that I look younger than I actually am. I am 58 years old and I'm a grandmother, very proud to be. But I also like being told that I look much younger. So I love OneSkin. It's founded by an all-woman team of scientists, and it's the first and only skin longevity company to target cellular senescence cells, which are a key hallmark of aging, with the proprietary OS1 peptide that is scientifically proven to decrease lines, wrinkles, and boost hydration and help with the thinning skin that often comes with age. So don't just take my word for it. They've got over 4,000 five-star reviews for their full line of face, body, sun, and travel-sized products. And my mother noticed too. So you know how mothers are, they tell the truth all the time. So for a limited time, you can try OneSkin for 15% off using the code MissTrial, MISSTRIAL, when you check out at oneskin.co. There's no M at the end, oneskin.co. With OneSkin, your skin can stay healthy, strong, and hydrated at every age. If you're anything like me, you're doing everything you can to try to reverse the signs of aging. I am almost 58 years old and I'm a grandmother, and I'm always looking for products that help me look younger and feel younger. And that's why I love Qualia Senolytic. It's a great new product that is sponsoring MissTrial, and hopefully you will try it too. This is about an ingredient or something called senolytics and it's a class of ingredients that were discovered in the last decade. And it's a big discovery for promoting healthy aging and enhancing your physical fitness and your physical, how you feel inside. So if you're trying to continue to work and have a career or spend more time with your grandson like I am, the aging process is not your friend. And when it comes to endless energy and productivity, I don't have what I used to have anymore. And that's why I am loving this new sponsor, Qualia Senolytic. And it's just great. It makes you actually feel younger in just a matter of months. So there's something called the senescent cells in your body that as we age, your body accumulates more of them. And this is what causes the symptoms of aging, whether it's aches and pains and discomfort, or you're slower, or it's harder to recover after working out, or you feel sluggish, or your mental and physical energy associated with that is, just different. You feel different. These are also called zombie cells because they're old, worn out cells that really don't serve a useful function anymore. And they take up space in your body and they deplete the healthy cells of nutrients that you have in your body. So it's like pruning a tree of dead leaves, if you will. So Qualia Senolytic removes these worn out senescent cells and basically allows the rest of your cells in your body to thrive. And it just take it 2 days a month. Its formula is a non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free formula, and the ingredients are meant to complement one another, factoring in the combined effect of all the ingredients together. It has a 100-day money-back guarantee. And this clinically tested 2-day rejuvenation regimen may hold the key to unlocking cellular health and revitalizing aging tissues throughout the body. So this is just a really, really, really great product. Resist aging at the cellular level and try Qualia Senolytic. Go to qualialife.com/MissTrial for up to 50% off and use the code MissTrial at checkout for an additional 15% for your convenience. Qualia Senolytic. And it's also available at select GNC locations near you. That's QUALIA life.com/MISS, 2 S's, MISSTRIAL for an extra 15% off your purchase. We're back, and I want to pivot now to Elon Musk and the Federal Election Commission. Now, the Federal Election Commission is an agency that is in charge of making sure that elections are held appropriately. I mean, I'm sure you, Kathleen, have experience with them, and will you explain a little bit about what they do and what they are, and then we can kind of talk about what's going on?
Yeah. So the specific rules of elections are a subject matter that's handled within each individual state. But the FEC, there are federal laws surrounding federal campaigns and federal elections that they oversee. And so the reason why we're talking about this today is because back in May of just this year, there was a PAC set up called America PAC. And it raised $9 million, like literally right off the bat. And their stated purpose was they said that they were going to be about voter registration. But what it has turned into is at least 2 investigations, one in North Carolina by the State Board of Elections and one by the Secretary of State in Michigan. They are reviewing whether this PAC violated any laws. Now, it's important to say, we were talking about Elon Musk before. Elon Musk is 1,000% behind America PAC. He originally said, but has since disavowed, that he was going to pour $45 million a month into America PAC. He said he was just going to stay out of the election. But after the attempted assassination on Donald Trump, he came out and said, I am all about Trump. And I'm all in. So that's kind of like the backdrop for this. But the key controversy, the FEC hasn't been able to outline any specific violations yet, but it is alleged that this PAC was set up with the attempted goal of helping people register to vote, telling them how, directing them to a website where they can make sure that they can register to vote. And basically what they were doing was if you responded to their solicitation, they asked you to put in your zip code. And if your zip code came back that you resided in a battleground state, you would be directed in one direction. And if, say, you put in your zip code and showed that you were a New York resident, you would may or may not have been directed towards an actual voter registration thing. They didn't really care about people like you. So then what they did was if you were living in a battleground state, you went to this secondary step and you were asked for more personal information and never actually sent to any place where you could register to vote, or they made you believe that you were actually registering to vote by giving this personal information. So therein lies the potential criminal violation, but this is just the beginning of this investigation. But this is the kind of stuff that is really, and End Citizens United is a They have brought this, they've demanded an FEC investigation into this. They want to do away with like big money in politics. Ever since the Citizens United case said that corporations should be treated like individuals in terms of how much money they can give, which I think offends most people at their core, that, you know, corporations are not people. They are not human.
People don't know what Citizens United is. So, you know, we have to I think explain that that's a court case that came down. The United States Supreme Court came down and essentially really it used to be that corporations couldn't donate. There was limits, you know, on what could be donated, and Citizens United really just transformed that. And so there's a group that's called End Citizens United, meaning end this, and that's what you're talking about. Is they're bringing cases forward to try and stop this unfairness. You know, one of the cases they're bringing and that they want the FEC to look into is that Elon Musk is using Twitter/X, you know, as a platform to promote Donald Trump, and that would count as an in-kind campaign donation. Now, in-kind, the rules of campaign donations is, you know, there are certain limits that individuals and corporations can give to campaigns, and there's maximums, et cetera. But you can't get around those rules by giving in-kind donations, which are things like, oh, you know, I'm Madison Square Garden and I'm going to donate the space to you. You know, that's considered a donation, right? And there are limits to that. And so, you know, or in
that case, Karen, though, what Musk did was say, okay, Donald Trump, now that I've endorsed you, I'm going to interview you. So this is like you going on CNN or anywhere else, right? And this is just a media hit, but it ended up being a 2-hour endorsement of Donald Trump, basically a campaign ad for Trump. And that's the kind of, they'll say I'm a media platform and that's why it's okay.
Right, but there is an exception. There's an exception to like free press, right? That's why CNN can host a town hall or ABC can host a debate, because there's a press exception if it's in the usual course of business of what they do. But if it's not in the normal course of business, I mean, I think the actual language is in the test that you have to look at. Hold on, I looked it up prior to this, but you have to actually, I'll get it before we finish. But you have to actually, it has to be part of your business. It can't be unusual. It can't be something that you don't normally do. And that's the test that the FEC will apply. And, you know, he can, so if he wants to use Twitter as this place where people just express views and it can be Democratic, it can be Republican, it can be whatever it is, that's one thing. But if he is now using this as you said, as like an in-kind campaign donation to Trump by hosting, you know, this 2-hour thing, by putting his employees that he pays for to help the technology of it all, you know, that's what they're saying is an in-kind campaign donation. And it is an unusual thing. It's not the thing that they normally would do. And that's the issue.
Can I found the standard? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
That standard. So as you were saying, Karen, there's an exemption for news outlets and media, but a contribution can result if the entity otherwise entitled to the press exemption performs functions that are not within its normal press functions. And there's a 2-part test for that. First, is the entity a press or media entity? Clearly, yeah. I mean, it's a media platform in some way. And then if the entity is not owned or controlled by a political party, which here it's not, then is the entity acting in its legitimate press function? Basically, are these comparable in form to those ordinarily issued by the entity? And the answer is no for that. I personally think, obviously, I'm not sitting in judgment on this. But as you said, it was a lengthy endorsement where he made Elon Musk, you know, made all kinds of statements in support of Trump, which is, you know, different than what's ordinarily issued by the, you know, this type of platform. So that's the test, at least.
And to that point, Danya, if the FEC doesn't crack down on something like this, which is just, it seems so blatant, what's stopping other corporations from hosting similar, campaign events disguised as media interviews? I mean, this really gets to the crux of.
I mean, arguably Fox does that.
What's that?
I said arguably Fox does that when.
Well, I mean, look, this is why people don't trust, the right or wrong. People don't think they get, the real news from any media outlet. And this is why people go to these other platforms, because they think they're getting actual, real, factual information. But the ethical concerns you couldn't pick a better person to kind of answer all these questions and test these legal theories than Elon Musk, who is going to be in the next administration if Trump wins. He's, the companies that he has federal contract. I mean, the list goes on and on. But, look, at the end of the day, the role of billionaires like, Elon Musk in elections, it raises the broader question about the need, regardless of what side you're on, the need for stronger campaign finance regulations and certainly more transparency.
Yeah. I mean, it's scary. It's like any billionaire could just say, you know what, I'm going to go buy, whatever it is, like X, and then I'm going to make it so that my information, the things I want, I'm going to promote the things I believe in, and I'm going to suppress the things that I don't believe in. Yeah. And, it's terrifying. I mean, it's
He's turned X into a disinformation machine. He really has.
Right.
I mean, he's turned it into a platform where election misinformation thrives. His retweets of false claims, like 2 million non-citizens are voting. I mean, they get millions and millions of views. And when you try to counteract that with actual facts, it gets like 50,000 views. I mean, Musk's, his AI chatbot Grok, it has even spread, false election information, telling their users who are on these platforms that Kamala Harris isn't going to appear on state ballots. I mean, that's totally false.
Yeah, there was an article in the Washington Post about the effect, the collateral consequences that follow whenever Musk, says something online, particularly about that spreads election misinformation or lies, and that it has this almost domino effect. And election officials say that his posts about voter fraud, or exactly as you said, like people voting who shouldn't, coincides with an increase in requests to purge the voter rolls, or in even threats to election officials. So there are real world consequences, when he says something or amplifies something.
There really are. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Danya, remind me, did Michael Cohen get prosecuted when he was prosecuted? Wasn't part of it that he was giving an in-kind campaign donation? Wasn't that part of the issue that wasn't that one of the theories, or am I misremembering that?
Yeah, just an unreported campaign contribution.
Yeah.
When he paid off Stormy Daniels, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. That's right.
Yeah.
Wow. That's just.
To be continued on this, but I really hope that people. I mean, it's really frightening when, this kind of mis and disinformation. It's coming at everyone from so many different angles, and trying to fact check that kind of stuff in real time when you're dealing with, the richest man in the world who has 197 million followers is almost impossible.
Yeah, he's supposed to be a trillionaire soon, apparently.
I mean, there have been, there have been law enforcement actions, obviously, that are trying to counteract the effects of Russian interference, as they did, in the last two elections. They're back, of course, and trying to promote Trump, and there have been federal law enforcement's actions against that. But that's a foreign sovereign. Here we're dealing with it, in our own country in the most insidious, dangerous way, like the platform that, people think, people believe, that's a joke. Like, don't believe what you hear on social media. I mean, a lot of people really do. And it is a scary prospect for sure.
Of course, the irony of all of this is, they go that one of the things that they are so anti is immigration. And let's not forget that, Elon Musk is not from here.
Yeah, he's South African. right?
He's South African and he's an immigrant. And guess what? You were able to become this billionaire, almost trillionaire, because of this country, because you immigrated here. That's the American dream that everybody else wants. Look at Trump's wife, all of his wives, like that's,
I think just 2 out of 3.
What? Okay, you're right. Sorry. I forgot about Marla Mason. Yeah, but like that's exactly right, and so that's the irony of it is whatever. It really
okay for me, but not for thee. Really is.
Yeah, that's right.
Point of the realm there,
because they're white. I mean, if illegal immigration was coming from Sweden, I'm sure you wouldn't hear this kind of all this stuff. It's because they're black and brown. I mean, let's just be real.
A lot of the misinformation that Elon has been putting out there, or retweeting, really does relate to immigration or non-citizen voting. That is obviously a theme for him and for his soon-to-be, we hope not, boss.
Yeah. Well, and also just knocking down, Kamala Harris because she's a woman and a woman of color, and I mean, it's just, the misogyny that's also interlaced with all this is pretty.
Yeah, icing on the cake.
Well, it's just when you're talking about, over 50% of the voting population is women, you have to you hope that women see this as for what it is.
Yeah, totally. Well, let's pivot to the Manhattan DA and what's going on with Donald Trump and trying to remove it to federal court and get that, not ever be sentenced. But, Manhattan DA is making a lot of news. We just today, my old office, of course, I love reminding people because I'm so proud. But, they just re-indicted Harvey Weinstein, which is huge, because Harvey Weinstein, he was convicted by a jury and sentenced. And then the Court of Appeals, the highest court in New York, reversed it, saying that there was 3 women that he was charged with. They convicted on 2. But also there was Molyneux evidence, which is this prior bad act evidence to show motive and intent. It was not introduced to show as a propensity because that's not allowed. And the Court of Appeals said it was overly prejudicial and that should not have been allowed. New York is very backwards, and a lot of states, even the federal government, allows this type of evidence to come in sexual assault cases because sexual assault, doesn't look the same. We now know that it's not a stranger coming out of a bush and jumping and, whatever. That's a very small, very, very small portion of sexual assault. Up to 80 or 90% of sexual assaults are acquaintances. And they are situations where there are power dynamics that, are uneven and it's not always obvious to juries about what sexual assault actually looks like in real life. And our colleague and law partner, Joan Aluzzi-Orban, who works for the Perry law firm where we all work, the Danya Perry law firm, which we are all proud to work at, and I'm proud that Joan Aluzzi and I worked together at the Manhattan DA's office, and she was the prosecutor who convicted Harvey Weinstein. She's one of the best trial lawyers in the world. And that was a hard fought battle because sexual assault doesn't always, look the way movies portray it to look. And so you need that expertise and others to be able to explain it and to show that, yeah, this is what it actually looks like. Well, the backwards New York Court of Appeals decided to reverse it and saying, no, that they shouldn't have allowed that in. And the Manhattan DA's office has just re-indicted him, although it is sealed because Harvey Weinstein he had some medical emergency and he hasn't he's been in the hospital. So they haven't been able to bring him to court to inform him of the charges. So it is sealed. But reporting is that they've added new charges, meaning there are new victims that have come forward. So, you can string together as many victims as you want, as long as they are charged. It's when it's uncharged that it becomes complicated and says it's overly prejudicial. So that's huge. We should follow that and continue to talk about that because that's really important. really important. But I want to talk about the Manhattan DA's office vis-a-vis Donald Trump and that case and what's going on. Danya, do you want to tell
What's
people?
going on is not much. The DA's office has plenty of time to prosecute Harvey Weinstein because it's not going to be dealing with the sentencing of Donald Trump anytime soon. The judge in that case, Judge Juan Merchan, delayed sentencing until after Thanksgiving, but more to the point, until after the election. So that's now going to take place November 26th. And his decision on immunity will come on November 12th. And again, that decision relates to the defense motion, Trump's motion to overturn the verdict on the grounds that evidence came in that under the new Supreme Court decision should have been disallowed, should never have been in front of the jury. Specifically, evidence that came at testimony in particular that came from some his head of communications and his executive assistant, and he was saying he's saying now that's within his his official executive functions and therefore should not have come in as evidence. And Judge Merchan agreed to delay sentencing until after the election. And really, we've talked about this a little bit, but the DA's office didn't push back on it at all. Basically, left it with the judge and said, "Here, you decide whether you want to adjourn this or not." And as he said, that was kind of, sub rosa, like a way of saying like we're okay with it being adjourned. And he said in a very pointed way that he was adjourning it because he didn't want to interfere with the election. He said specifically he wanted to avoid the appearance of political influence on the proceedings. And, that is, sometimes judges make decisions not based on, an actual bias or actual influence, but on the appearance of one, because it's so important that the public not believe that the judiciary is biased in any way. So even the appearance of impropriety or the appearance of political influence was enough here for him to say, let's push this. It's interesting, particularly in light of Judge Chutkan in the DC election interference case, who said, you know what, I don't care about the electoral calendar. I'm moving this case along. So you would think like there's a bit of tension there, two judges saying different things, but really I think it's important to keep in mind that the cases are in very different procedural postures, that in the case before Judge Chutkan, we're in very preliminary pre-trial mode, and she is going to be deciding legal issues. And that is typical. Like if you paused those kind of proceedings, anytime you had a public official who's accused of corruption or anything that has to do with an election, or there's an election coming up, you wouldn't be able to make those kinds of cases. So, that's on the one hand. And then the other, Merchan is making a final judgment in a case. And whatever he decides, there are going to be a lot of people who are going to be upset about it. And so he's saying, should I really do this days before the election? On balance, to avoid the appearance of a thumb on the scale, I'm going to push it back. And hearing no objection from the prosecution, I think he felt unburdened to do that. So
I thought it was a little more pointed towards the prosecution. And he basically said, although you say you take no position, you were taking a position. You basically said it's okay to do this, because he was basically saying, look, don't put this on me. You consented. He was, I think, a little bit, he called them out on their little too cute by half, trying to, we trust you, judge, do what you want to do. But they were consenting to it as well. So yeah, he put it over. He felt he had to. Interestingly, the other thing that is going on is, so basically they got what they asked for. Okay. Emile Beauvais, the lawyer, and Todd Blanche, the other lawyer, for Donald Trump, specifically said, we want to delay this case until after the election because it could influence the election. That was their stated reason. And they got what they wanted. Well, they're talking out of both sides of their mouth, because then they run over to they're in front of, they're trying to get the case removed altogether to federal court, right? So they've been going to Judge Hellerstein, who's the federal district court in the Southern District, saying, hey, he's a former president. Former presidents shouldn't be prosecuted in a pesky little lowly state court. You're opening up floodgates. That means any state prosecutor in any, there's a million of them all around the country, could prosecute a president and a former president. So this belongs in federal court. He's a former federal official. And Judge Hellerstein, a couple of years ago, or a year, whatever it was, a while ago, a long time ago, ruled, I think it was about a year ago, ruled that no, this is purely private conduct, and I'm not removing this in federal court. Paying off a porn star is, in your personal capacity when you were not president, is purely personal, using your personal lawyer. That doesn't belong in federal court. And he didn't appeal that. Well, he's running back to federal court, same judge, to Hellerstein, saying, no, now you have to remove me because immunity, presidential immunity. He's basically trying to get them to do it again. And he repeated himself and said, no, that's not going to happen. So he runs to the appellate court in federal court, the Second Circuit, and they're saying, we want a stay of the sentencing. Yes, we know we got it put over till November 26th, but we don't want it to even go then. That's not, we want it to go longer. And instead of now using the excuse of influencing the election, what they're saying is, okay, yeah, no, it's not because it's influencing the election, because now it's not. Now we want it to happen because the reason was, God, I hate when things leave your brain like that. They said the reason, because of the appeal, because we want to be able to appeal the immunity decision that Judge Merchan is going to rule, and that's not enough time to appeal it all the way to the Supreme Court, because he's going to run to mommy and get the Supreme Court to make new fake law and save him from his crimes that he has committed. And the other thing that just happened is the Court of Appeals so now we're appealing through the state court system. It goes, Judge Merchan, and then there's the appellate division, and then there's the Court of Appeals, which is the highest court in New York, just ruled that the gag order in that case is staying. So he still can't threaten the prosecutors and the judge's staff. So he's still under a gag order, and they basically said, we're not lifting that. So that's the state of play in the Manhattan DEA's office. That's what's going on.
Just to throw this out there, you could argue that, the real impact of, hasn't it already happened? And didn't we see in the polling in the immediate aftermath of his conviction in that case, that it just made his supporters even more fervently in support of him. It didn't really move the needle at all, so to make this argument that we don't want to.
I was wondering if that's why the DA's office didn't push for his sentencing before the election. Who knows?
It could be, but I've never seen the DA's office do anything for politics. I think they are just so down the middle, and they believe in the rule of law so much that they really believe that that this is appealable, an interlocutory appeal, and that's not enough time. That whatever Judge Merchan rules on immunity is appealable, and I think they really believe that, and that's that. I give them a lot of credit for, but they should have just owned it. They should have just said it. What I didn't love is when they said we take no position, because you are taking a position and everybody knows it.
Right. This is a strong prosecution, and they, not shy.
Yeah.
Until now. So.
Exactly. So that's the only thing I didn't love. That just own it. Own that you think that, because that's what it means to be a prosecutor, right? As we all know, you don't think about politics. You prosecute crimes without fear or favor. You don't, think about, whether you like the person or not. It's about whether they committed a crime. So, it is what it is. So anyway, I think we've reached the end of another episode of MissTrial. Love you guys. Love doing this with you. And so much fun.
So fun. See you soon.
In the office in a few. Bye, guys.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the Midas Touch newsletter at MidasTouch.com/newsletter.